Well, it has been a while since I've made a video, and got an email the other day. I don't check that email very often with AgTeachering, but I saw one pop in, and there were some questions for us, and I thought I could cover some of the answers in a quick video. A while back, when I was still teaching at high school before I came here, I did a couple of setup videos on some of the welders that we had in the booths there, and now a couple of years later we're looking at some questions on a welder that was there. I don't have access to that specific welder, but I think I can answer the questions with the welders that I do have here. So hold on, and we'll see where the ride takes us. Hopefully we can get some things figured out. It should work out pretty good. So anyway, thanks for sticking with me a little bit. Let's get after it. Okay, so here we are, ready to change out the spool on this welder. I've got a flux core type of wire here, and we're going to trade it out for some solid wire. So I've also got another little welder that we're going to change the wire out on. It ran out, so we're just going to put a new spool of solid wire in. And there are some small differences. This is the reason I want to show both of them to you. So this one's actually hooked up to my power source. It's an XMT 350. I did a demo video a while back on setting up an XMT 304. Very similar. I think I was using the same wire feeder. So that's going to be the same kind of program. That power source doesn't, I mean, it's not standard with any wire feeder per se. You could get just about any aftermarket wire feeder, I guess, that's compatible and could hook it up. And they're going to be fairly similar in the way that they work. And so that's what we're just going to swap out the wire rolls here, and or the wire spool, and show you how to take the wire rolls and change those out so that you get the right time for the wire that you're using. So flux core, I like to use the knurled rollers so that it can grab onto that wire a little bit better than just the smooth rollers, the V rolls. So all that I've done here, first thing is just taking that compression spring there, nut there, whatever, it just hinges out of the way, and then you can lift up that drive roller. There are two drive rollers on this wire feeder, so they just come apart when you pop that open, and then I can roll this wheel back. I've already cut the wire there, so it's cut enough for me just to bring it back. I want to hold on to this side because if I don't and it comes wheeling out of there, that'll all of a sudden come unspooled and we'll have a big mess of wire on our hands. This is flux core, so it's not super strong. When I'm bending it around, it can easily break, so I'm going to be pretty careful running it through that little hole on the side there and bending it over so it holds in place. At that point, I can pull this roll off and I'm ready to put our solid wire roll on. Pretty important to make sure you get it put on the right way. So the easiest way to figure out what that right side up is to see which direction that wire needs to feed in to your gun lead. So it comes into an opening here, and then straight into my drive rolls, and straight into the gun there, to the lead. So I know that that's going to be a pretty straight line. It comes underneath where the spool loads up. So the wire needs to come off of the spool on the bottom side. I've got a couple of other MIG machines, a 251. Actually, the 251 comes off the bottom as well. But my 252, a Miller-Matic 252, spools off the top. So you just got to be paying attention to where that is feeding in. The 252 is actually on an angle when that wire comes in. So be paying attention, watching where that comes in, but the process is the same as long as you get them feeding in the right way. So load that up. And there's a little hole here to hook onto a little nub in the back. That keeps it kind of in place when the wheel is just getting done. Your wire is getting pulled through the system. it'll kind of freewheel if you don't have it hooked there. There's some tension on this, so if you've got it hooked on that, it won't do that freewheeling, which is going to prevent it from unspooling where you don't want it. Lock it back into place. Sometimes there's a nut, sometimes it's a little clamp, and so that easily just clamps it on there. I remember setting a wire roll up like this, had some kids helping me, and that clamp didn't go back on the spool. This one's handy because it's actually sitting on a little bit of an angle, so gravity's going to help it stay in place. That one that we changed out wasn't. It was dead flat. We started running that welder, and that wire spool, brand new spool, came tumbling off of that thing. It was up in a welding booth, maybe like 8 feet off the ground, and when it hit the ground, it just destroyed the plastic spool, and all of that wire just came undone. It looked like a giant slinky that somebody made a mess of, and it was a bad day, but we survived. Anyway, now that we've got that spool on there, we can feed the wire in. Before we get the wire there, I do want to change out my drive rolls though. Like I said, these are knurled rolls, so they've got little grippers on the tracks there, so it can hold on to that flux core wire, that hollow wire, without crushing it, but also still have some traction to hold on to it. So we'll take those off. You just have to twist the little lockers here, and they come right off. This one looks like it's gonna have to be. There we go. They just slide off, and then I put my just regular V rollers back into place with them. This has got an 035 on one side and an 030 on the other. We run a 0.035 and 035 wire, so that's the side we're going to put back into place. Lock it in. Do the same on the top one. Make sure the 035 is where it needs to be, and then we're good to go. That wire's set. Now I still have my flux core wire running through my lead, so I'm going to pull that off of here. And oh boy, I'm not going to be able to find it from this side. Usually I'll pull it out from this end, but it's lost down in there, and I'm not sure what happened, if a kid pulled on it or what. Obviously there's lots of times when I don't know what happens. I'm just glad there's a little bit sticking out the back here, so I can hook onto that with a pair of pliers. Hopefully give it a pull out of there. Boy, it feels like it's, maybe it got welded into place on the end of the liner. That's no good. Well, that being the case, I guess we get a little extra on this one. I'm gonna have to get a wrench. That's tight on there too. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, burnt right in there. And I can see it right on the end. I might just have to clip that last little bit of the liner off to, yep, get that to work. That came undone and it sucked it right back down in there. So I'm still gonna have to pull it out the back side. Gonna be a little easier pull, I hope. Yep. So what happened is some kid probably came by and saw that wire sticking out, my guess with no contact tip and no nozzle, and maybe a beginner welder had no idea, and they just, I don't know, pulled the trigger, and we end up with a welded in end of the wire on the liner, which obviously is not good, but fairly easy fix today. Now I got my little roll here. We're just going to tie that up and throw it in the scrap bin, get rid of that. Now we can run our solid wire. So it's important to make sure you don't go wheeling off of there, and that, because that'd be no good, because it makes a mess. I'm just going to clip this nice and straight. Then I can come in the side of the machine, back into these feeder deals, and then right across the top of the wire roller into that V groove and into the other side that leads into the liner. At that point, I can just lock down the drive rollers, run that back up on there. Seems a little tight. I don't think we need it that tight. And then we can run that back out. I'm gonna put my diffuser back on though. And then turn it on, get some power. I'm gonna turn on my wire feeder. Got to make sure that I'm selected to MIG so that it'll actually run. And then I can pull the trigger and it should run some wire through there. It'll just push it out with the drive rollers. It's got to go all the way through the lead out to the gun before you can do anything. So it takes a second. This wire feeder machine actually has a jog purge type of a switch on it. Not all welders do, but what I'm going to do is I'll just flip the switch up to the wire jog, and it'll push that wire out without running any gas. For instance, if I was just going to pull the trigger to make the wheel go, then I'd also be getting gas at the same time. But if you've got a jog switch on your welder, that'll allow that wire to move without running any wire. Again, the opposite direction on this machine, on this wire feeder, on that switch, will go down to a purge, which means it's just going to feed gas through the line without sending any wire. So if you're just hooking up a new tank and you want to make sure there's no atmospheric air in the line, you can purge it. It'll push the shielding gas through and you won't have any trouble with that, which is pretty nice too. So like I say, we're just going to jog it. I'm going to turn the wire speed up a little bit just so it doesn't take very long. And we want to stretch this cable out, or this lead, as straight as we can. It can be kind of swooping curves, but you don't want it to be too tight curves anywhere. Otherwise it gets stuck and that's no fun. Well, we're not going anywhere. Had to turn it on. So there you see it's rolling, and it'll come out the end of the gun here pretty soon. Speed that up even just a little bit more. There it is. And we've got wire ready to roll. I've got a new contact tip somewhere for this one. You gotta set it down at my nozzle, but I'm gonna have to get a contact tip for it. So from there we can add our contact tip and our nozzle. Trim it, and we're ready to weld as long as we've got some shielding gas hooked up. So there you go. Pretty slick little process. I'm going to show you the same thing on our smaller welder. Again, this is like a 33-pound roll. I've got, I think it's a 11.5 or 12-pound roll, 12.5 maybe, that we'll put in a smaller welder. So here we go. Very similar to the other machine that we just finished up with. There is a tension that just pivots down, and then you've got access to your drive roll. This one's only got one drive roller instead of the two. It does have a guide wheel on top, but it's just freewheeling and only one drive roll. The spool itself connects with a nut, and it actually is reverse threads, so pay attention to that. It's got some pretty large tighten words on here to show you which direction it goes to tighten or loosen. Then you can take that spool out when you're done with that. Obviously the little hole, like I showed you on the other one, is still there. This one's not all the way through, but it does have a spot for this little nub to rest in, again, to help it from free spooling off of there. This one does have a hole all the way through, and handy dandy, it's on top and bottom, or side to side, whichever way you look at it. But anyway, that one's ready to roll. Again, this one, the wire comes straight off of the bottom of the roll, so that's the direction we're going to put it in. Let's get this thing cleaned up a little bit so that that will run through the system. Okay, just gonna slide that on there. I put that nub at the top of the rotation so it can be, so it's a little easier to find with the roll, with the spool. And then I'm just gonna wheel it back a little bit just so that the wire can get into that guide. And then I'll push it in there, okay? I've still got my other wire in the lead, so we're gonna pull that out first. I just kind of clamped it in there so it wouldn't move. Grab a hold of this end, because this time the wire's just right here. It does have a little ball on the end, so I'm not going to be able to pull it back through that way, and I really don't want to. I'd rather pull it out the direction that the wire is usually traveling in the liner, and that's just personal preference. I don't know that that's a requirement. We'll pull it out that way, and again we'll just coil all that up and throw it in the scrap bin when we get done. And I like to pull the contact tip out, the nozzle off, and just run it out of the diffuser, so there's nothing that wire, as the new wire's coming out, will run into. So like I said, I just clamped this down. I got to get it fed into the liner, so we'll do that now. Again, I'm running a 035 wire, so I've made sure that that's what my drive rolls are on. I can clamp it back down on there now. Make sure that seems pretty tight, a lot tighter than 035 needs. Sometimes these kids, when they get in there and look at them, think, oh, that's not tight enough. We'll loosen that off a little bit. Run it about there and see how that works. This machine is not set up with a jog type of a switch like the XMT, or excuse me, the wire feeder that was on my XMT. This one's actually built into the system. When it recognizes that open circuit voltage for a certain amount of time, it thinks, oh, he's just trying to run wire out. So it's gonna all of a sudden turn off the gas and kick the wire speed up automatically, just because of the way the computer's programmed. So pretty cool that way. So I'll turn it on now that we've got the system ready to go. I've got MIG selected so that I can run the wire rollers, and it's ready to go. So I'm going to kick it on, make sure this is fairly straight. Just pull that trigger. You'll notice, oh wait a minute, I almost made a big mistake. Let's put the nut back on. Like I said, it is reverse threads, so tighten it up so that works. Now we can run that. So right now gas is coming out until it recognizes that, picks up speed, turns the gas off, and is going to push that wire out the end. And there it is. So now I'll put that contact tip back on. Nozzle, thread it back into place, clip my wire off, and I'm ready to weld. Good to go. All right, next thing we're going to look at is fixing a burnt tip. Oh, and this one was burnt a little bit, but it was enough that it's popped loose on its own. I had a student come to me earlier today and say, hey, I got the tip burned up and it's not letting wire come out. I said, oh good, I'm going to put that in a video. And figuring out how to change that and fix that problem. So, oh, it looks like everything wants to come out with this one. So first thing you're going to want to do in the case of a burnt tip, obviously this one's still going to work now that it's come off of there. It did have a little bit of a, the wire was stuck down to the top of the tip, but luckily it wasn't as bad as other times. Sometimes that thing is just melted to heck. Kid dips the end of that contact tip in the puddle and just melts the heck out of it. So first things first, pull the nozzle off. This is a good time to clean that out. You can see how dirty they get. There are things you can dip these nozzles in to help resist that spatter from sticking to it, anti-spatter sprays and things like that. I found that that becomes a bigger mess in a school shop, and so we don't do that. I just recommend that my kids clean these things out on a regular basis, and we don't worry about dipping or spraying or doing anything like that. It just ends up being a bigger mess and a bigger pain for what we're doing. So just clean them regularly and you're in pretty darn good shape. This nozzle then you can just pull out of there. If it's really welded down and stuck to the wire, all you're going to do is feed a little bit of wire out and it brings the tip with it. Then you can take your wire cutters, your dikes, whatever, and just clip that off. And hold on to this so I don't lose it. Then you're ready to put a new contact tip on. It's real easy. Contact tips are consumables, which means you're going to go through them no matter what. It's just the way it is. I think a beginning welding class probably moving through them a little quicker than others, but that contact tip, a new one now, can just slide back on the wire, and then you can thread your cleaned nozzle back into place, and you're ready to weld. Trim that up for them. It's good to go. So there we go. Yeah, like I said, that was all in response to an email that I got just the other day. Thought it was worthwhile to make a quick video. It's been a long time. 2020's been interesting, as you know. So along with that, just things get busy and videos have not been a priority. But I thought this one was worthwhile to throw in there. So thanks for hanging out, one day at a time. So I got an email the other day. That didn't work.